Yeah. All right, so we're picking up in the middle today of chapter 6 of Luke. Last time we had a couple stories, Sabbath stories, of where Jesus is being confronted by the Pharisees regarding the way that he deals with the Sabbath. What was the first story here? His disciples are and he are on the road, and the Pharisees take offense because the disciples are doing something. What are they doing on the Sabbath that to them is not lawful?
They're plucking the grain so they could eat on the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, plucking grains, rubbing in their hands. I think that
Mm.
might have been the greater offense is that they're actually kind of grinding it. They're doing some work here in a very miniature scale, but they're doing work, and according to their take on it. And again, Jesus could have answered and said, "Oh, give me a break, guys. Come on, serious, you know." But instead, he references David when he ate the bread of the presence that was only lawful for the priests. If you can remember that scene, what was that all about? Why did David eat the bread that was only for the priests? If you can remember.
He was running from Saul. He
He's
was
running from,
hungry.
he's running from Saul, and he is the anointed one. He is the king, but he is the one being persecuted by Saul on the run. And then the priest is able to make an exception for him because of who he is and the mission that he's on. If you remember, the priest just doesn't give this to anybody. He doesn't even take that bread and give it to the children in the area. He gives it to David specifically because he is the anointed one and he's on a special mission as he understands it. Um, and that Jesus kind of takes that opportunity to explain that's what we're dealing with here. I am not just a man. I'm the Son of Man. I'm the Messiah, the Son of David. I'm the King. I'm the anointed one you've been waiting for. And therefore, I am Lord of the Sabbath here. There are exceptions made for those who are the anointed ones. And he's also on a special mission. And it also hints at that these Pharisees are actually playing the part of Saul. They're the ones who are in power right now, who are persecuting the one to whom all power is going to come. So that's the quick one on Luke, beginning of Luke 6. He had another one here. Now he gets in trouble on the Sabbath, or he almost gets in trouble. He gets out of it very easily. But it does lead to their being furious. What was the scene here? What did he do wrong, according to the Pharisees, on the Sabbath day and the next time?
He healed a man's hand on the Sabbath.
Yeah, he heals a man on the side with a withered hand. Again, the thing is, you're allowed to provide emergency treatment, if you will, on the Sabbath day. But this is no emergency. It's a withered hand. He can wait another day. We can do that. We can come back in a few hours. We can make it happen. Um, but Christ makes a point regarding the Sabbath. What's the point of the Sabbath?
So the Sabbath is supposed to be for the people.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And the question is, what should we do? Do good or do harm on the Sabbath?
Mhm.
And the implication is, if I leave this man when I am able to heal him right now, I am doing him harm if I do not heal him at this point. If I intend to heal him and I elongate his suffering, it's perfectly fitting for him to find rest from his troubles and suffering on Sabbath day. So anyway, that was some of the things. But they come up, they're filled with fury because of this, and we'll keep an eye on them as their contentions arise against Christ. So we'll pick it up here at verse 12 now. And Rob Roy, would you get that for us? Verses 12 to 16.
Okay. In these days, he went. Can you make it just a tad bigger, Pastor? Just a tad.
All right. All right. Very good. I'm going to lose my spot, but I'll make it bigger for you.
Oh, never mind. That's okay. I can do it.
Oh, too late. Too late. Too late. See what you did? Okay. There we go. Luke 6.
It's so weird that it does that.
I don't know why it does that. I don't. It must be something in the Microsoft
Sorry.
Word.
When you
That's
do it, it makes everything above where you are in line. So it
Yeah.
shows what you're looking at there.
I don't know what it's doing. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Okay. In these days, he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose from them 12, whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James and John and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas and James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon who was called the Zealot, and Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor.
So in those days, so first off, where's he going here to pray?
Mountain.
Mount-
Yeah, he goes to the mountain to pray. And he's all night in prayer to God. What do you make of that here? Let's just start there, for example. What's the significance of this? I mean, he has to go to a mountain to pray, and there he continues all night in prayer to God.
He wants to
What-
get away from the crowds, and he needs to be basically left alone to spend time with the Father.
Okay, yeah. So he gets away from the crowds. And that's why it's like this is one of the prayers, even his disciples, because we don't know what he said, what he prayed. Many of Jesus' prayers, we know what he said because he said it. When they prayed out loud, and he prays in front of his disciples, and they can relate what he said. But here we don't know. So I think this is before he's even chosen, if you notice that, his apostles. He hasn't figured that out yet.
Well,
But
makes
he-
you, the way it reads, you almost take it to be that he was praying for wisdom to choose the people who should be apostles or something related to that.
I think
He
that's that-
prayed, and then he called his disciples and chose the 12.
yeah.
My
I'll say,
is a break after 12, and it starts with the 12 chosen on 13. So I was thinking about that, and I wonder if he just needed to rest after dealing with the Pharisees. But I
perhaps
like the idea of him needing time to reflect on who to
Yeah.
select for disciples too.
Yeah, he does invite his disciples oftentimes to come away with him and pray and to rest and such like that. But there's something that's really interesting. It really speaks to, number one, I think, his humanity in this case, that he's not Superman here. He comes away to pray. And also his just complete dependence on the Father.
Mhm.
The Son does not come to do his own will. He comes to do the Father's will. And his complete dependence, he's in a position, this is a remarkable thing, that we have one who is the almighty God, who is also completely dependent upon the Father. He has all power, and yet he's also, again, does nothing of his own. He does everything relying upon the Father. So I think it's a great picture of faith and dependence as he does this here. So, which says something to us. If Jesus has to pray, what are we thinking that we don't have to do these things here that we need? All right, so he's clearly, I think you're right. I think he's clearly praying for some kind of wisdom or direction from the Father. At least that's part of the time there. Who do I choose? Who are the ones you're calling to? Who are the ones you're giving to me here? And then he comes the next day. He calls his disciples. You'll notice, how many disciples does he call?
There's 12. I've never counted.
Well, it's interesting. He called his disciples
But he doesn't give a number. From them, he chose the 12.
from them. So there are many, there are probably many of them.
Mm.
And he will choose from them, he will choose 12 to be what?
Apostles.
Apostles. All right. So the question is this, and I think we may have covered it before, but it's good to remember. What's the difference between an apostle and a disciple?
Well,
A disciple officially is a learner, and an apostle is one sent.
Yeah. A disciple is a learner. An apostle, we'll say, how about an ambassador? One officially sent to represent and to speak for. So that's a much higher calling. So we are all here. We would say we're all disciples of Christ. We're here. We believe in him. We want to learn of him, and follow him. That's what a disciple does.
Mm.
But the apostles are something different. They're those who are specifically appointed to speak for Christ. They
And,
represent. Yeah.
and also, is it true that the apostles actually walked physically with Christ? Like we
Yeah.
can all be followers of Christ, but we'll never be apostles because we did not walk next to him when he was on earth. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
so the apostles, there were qualifications for apostles that we learn in the book of Acts when Judas, if you remember, after he dies, we're down to 11 apostles and they have to choose a replacement for Judas. And they said, well, let the Lord choose, but there are certain qualifications that these apostles had to have. If you remember what they were in the book of Acts.
They had to see the resurrected Jesus.
Yeah. First thing is they were, according to Acts 1, apostles were with Jesus from the beginning, which was the baptism of John. They were chosen along the way. They chose somebody who was with him. Who were witnesses to his ministry. And then they were witnesses to the resurrection, we would say this, to the death, resurrection, death, burial, resurrection, and one more thing,
Ascension.
and the ascension. Got that right? And ascension of Christ. Because they're going to be testifying to that. That's the gospel. So when you see the Apostles' Creed, it's the Apostles' Creed because those are the things that especially that middle section that the apostles witnessed and testified to. We believe in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, crucified, dead, and buried. Third day he rose, he ascended to heaven. All those things we believe, not because we saw those things, but because his apostles saw them and testified to them.
Mm.
So let's talk about who are these apostles. Let's see if we can remember their names. So the 12 apostles, and we'll put them in groups of 2. Let's see what groups here. Okay. Let's see how we doing. Can you remember their names here? First,
Simon Peter.
Simon Peter.
Andrew, John, James.
Start with those 2 brothers. So we're trying to remember them here. So Simon Peter's typically listed first. He's the head of them here. Simon Peter and Andrew, his brother. And the next 2 mentioned are?
John and James.
Yeah.
Assuming I'm not reading.
Yeah, James and John. And they are also brothers.
Zebedee's.
Zebedee's
Son.
Zebedee, right? Next ones are
Philip and Bartholomew.
Philip and Bartholomew. Bartholomew. I think he has a different name. Is it Thaddeus and the other ones?
Yes, yes, yeah.
And then there's
Matthew.
Matthew, Thomas. Matthew's also sometimes known as
Levi.
Levi. Okay. So that's 8. Who are the other 4? Next 2?
James, the son of Alphaeus.
Yeah. And Simon the
Zealot.
The zealot.
Sometimes he's called James the Lesser, James, son of Alphaeus,
Right.
and Simon the Zealot.
You always get there's some on this list you don't even hear of, and it always kind of sparks my imagination. What did they say or do? We don't know, we only have what we have.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's tradition about of them, of their lives.
Right.
But I'm not as familiar with their
Yeah, I have a list of what tradition says about how they were killed. It's pretty hideous.
John
Yeah.
MacArthur actually wrote a book called 12 Ordinary Men.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I have that book and I read it. I don't remember all the details, but it's interesting to think that they came up with sort of these little mini biographies on all these people.
All right, the last two are the two Judas.
Well, Judas Iscariot,
Yeah, before him is Judas,
Brother of James.
son of James, and Judas Iscariot.
Judas and Judas.
Two Judases. So there's two James, two Judases, two Simon. So right there, you have you remember three names. You got half of them down. Got Andrew, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, and Thomas. So great.
So I just want to clarify the Judas, son of James, is James, the son of Alphaeus, and not another brother as Peter.
No, we don't. The son of James just is the name of his father is James. There's a lot of Jameses that are fathers. It's not.
My Bible says the brother of James. I have King James version.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Brother of James. Huh. This one has son of James. So I'm not sure actually how to think that. I know there's other lists that are a little different than this.
Oh yeah.
Compare some of the names are a little different. Again, like Bartholomew, I think is the same as Thaddeus.
Yeah.
There's some other names in there that are different. Do you remember what they were? Was it
Yeah.
Nathaniel?
My brain is dead. Who's the guy that saw him sitting under the tree or whatever?
Nathaniel.
Nathaniel. Yeah. Now, who is he also named as?
That's a good question.
Yeah, he's not even on this list.
Right. Some people say he's the same as, and I'm trying to think who it is.
Yeah, so I know that so we know that Matthew is also known as Levi, and
Yeah.
Bartholomew is also known as Thaddeus, as far as I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. That's the standard. Yeah.
Maybe it's
Bartholomew, I thought.
so
Nathaniel is another name for one of these guys.
all right. Yeah. So where is the list? If we can find maybe let me call up my Bible app here for a second. We got a moment. Let's see if we can find some of those lists. All right, let me pull up my text here. We got to get to the bottom of this here. So I know Matthew.
Nathaniel is also known as Bartholomew.
Oh, is he?
Okay. Now what
I
about?
found on my
All right, so let me see. Matthew has a list of them. So let's try that list. James, John, okay, Thomas. I know Thomas is going to be in the list here. So according to Matthew's list, Matthew 10, we have the 12 apostles: Simon, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew. That's the same as we have. James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus.
So Thaddeus and Bartholomew on this list are not the same one.
No, Thaddeus would be
Nathaniel. From this list right here, we were equating Thaddeus and Bartholomew. Obviously, that's not the case with
but
this list.
He should be Judas,
Yeah, Jude the Apostle,
right?
which doesn't make sense because we mentioned Jude,
hit-
Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot. Oh,
Well,
there.
hit that, Pastor, hit Thaddeus, that little A by Thaddeus.
Okay. No, just the manuscript, just different ways of saying his name. But let me call it up here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this now. I'm going to share my other screen here again, and let's bring it up together here. Okay. All right. So if we look at the screen here, I'm going to just cut and paste Matthew's text here right below it so you can see it. So this is Matthew's text here. So we've got Simon, who's called Peter already. and Andrew. James and got those. Philip and Bartholomew got those. So 6 are the same. And then it's Matthew and Thomas. Got that. And then it's James, the son of Alphaeus, same here. Okay. And Thaddeus. So I think that's James. Judas, the son of James, is also called Thaddeus.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing in my notes here.
Yeah. So that's Thaddeus, and then Judas Iscariot. Okay.
Okay, we're still looking for Nathaniel.
So Nathaniel, you're saying is Bartholomew, then you're thinking.
Yeah, yes.
Do you have a note on that somewhere? Like a study Bible note? Because I know he's called by, that's in the, he's mentioned in the Gospel of John. Nathaniel is. Let me just see. Okay. All right. Let me see Nathaniel, if there's any other places mentioned of him. Jesus calls Philip and Nathaniel. It's only in the Gospel of John that you have Nathaniel.
Okay. So
Okay,
that,
so I found the book that I borrowed from Rob on the commentary. What it says is Nathaniel is not mentioned in the synoptic gospels, but in every list of the apostles in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the name Bartholomew is listed with Philip,
Hmm.
as Nathaniel is linked with Philip here.
Okay.
It is
So-
likely that Nathaniel and Bartholomew were the same person.
All right, we'll go with that. That sounds about right. All right, so there's your list of 12. These are the ones that he is specifically appointed, and including, it's interesting, he prays to God, and it doesn't mean that God gives him the 12 best men that are out there, obviously, because one of them is the traitor. So he, by God's will, by God's design, he has him choose the 12, including the traitor, Judas, who obviously has a very significant role to play in the Gospels. But it's really interesting. He prays, and God, the Father, gives him the wisdom and the direction to choose Judas. So
And we don't, if Jesus was praying for wisdom, assuming he was praying for wisdom of who to choose. Just curious, it makes me wonder if he would have known that Judas was gonna, initially, if Judas was gonna be the traitor. Or
yeah,
if that's something that he only gleaned later on, towards the end of, maybe towards the very end.
yeah. Well, he does mention it early on at times before that he clearly knows that he's going to betray him, and even calls him a devil in John chapter 6. But yeah, it's at some point he understands who this is, whether from the very beginning, I'm not sure. But all right, let's pick it up from there. Verse 17 to 19. Liz Pervinus, would you read for us?
And he came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all the crowd sought to touch him, for power came from him and healed them all.
Okay, he came down with them. So we left off, he went up to a mountain to pray. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose from them. So it sounds like they kind of come to him. He calls them up the mountain, and then he comes down with them. He comes down with the 12. And now he is on a level place. So Jesus and the 12, well, apostles and disciples come down to a level place. And what are we told happens when they come down there?
He heals.
Yeah, he heals everybody. But before that, before he heals anybody, what does it said in verse 17? Um,
Multitude of people came after him.
yeah. So there's a great crowd. There seems to be two groups of people. There's a great crowd of disciples and a great multitude of people. Where are they coming from?
People
Or-
all over.
Yeah. From Tyre and Sidon. Where's Tyre and Sidon?
Lebanon.
Right on the coast.
Yeah.
of-
Yeah, that's from the north. And where's Judea and Jerusalem?
South.
In the
So
south. You can kind of see it. I'll pull a map up in a second here. So they're coming from north and south to him. I'm going to just come up here for a second so you can see the map. Here we go. I think this is where we are. Oh, I lost my spot. All right, so if on the map here you can see, there's the Mediterranean Sea. Here's Jesus is operating in Galilee, doing a lot of work, particularly around Capernaum area, and there's some mountainous areas and plains. And Tyre and Sidon are way up here in the north. They're coming that far north, coming down from the north to him. And Tyre and Sidon, historically speaking, are compared. They're often compared to which cities in the Old Testament, if you remember?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
They're like Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, they are. Jesus says Tyre and Sidon. They're cursed people and nations from the north
And
coming.
yeah, there, Isaiah and Ezekiel that God prophesies, Isaiah prophesied that they were going to be destroyed.
Yeah. And so they're coming down from the north and then up from the south, way south here. And they're good distances too, is from Judea and Jerusalem coming from the south. And of course, Judea and Jerusalem, this is God's city. This is and so you can see from the north and the south, all sorts of people coming to see
Are
Jesus here.
do they still exist today? I should know this, but do they still exist even as another name?
Tyre and Sidon still exist.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody lives there or if they're ruins. Do you know much about them?
I know you can see them on a map.
Yeah.
The area.
Yeah, Tyre is an interesting one too. Has the two island. There's an island fortress, and then there's the city of Tyre on the coast.
Right.
And God had prophesied that the Lord, I can't remember who prophesied. Was it Ezekiel or Isaiah? One of those prophesied the absolute destruction of Tyre, even the island, and that no one would ever live there again. And that was the city. If you remember how they were destroyed, what happened there? It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, they laughed at, was it
Alexander.
Alexander the Great? They laughed at him. That they were unapproachable, and he built a causeway out to them.
Yeah, he took the ruins, he destroys the city on the coast, takes the ruins and builds a causeway and takes his army over there. Just absolutely, they were unbeatable before that time. You couldn't break their hold. And but Alexander was determined, so. All right. Let's come down to our text again. So what happens in this scene here? We have where are we going here? Okay. So they came to hear him. Why did they come? There are two reasons.
To be healed.
They
Yeah,
hear him to be healed.
yeah. There's two reasons given.
The
they-
diseases and the unclean spirits.
Yeah, so they came to hear him, and they came to be healed of their diseases. And so that kind of really helps because he says it's almost like there's this group of two kinds of people there. There are those who are coming to hear his word. There are those who are his disciples that came to hear him. That's really the mark of the true disciple is what we want from the Lord is his word. We want to hear his voice. We want him to teach us, to instruct us, to show us the way. But then there are many always in these crowds that are coming not for any purpose except for their own benefits that they can seek and seeking to be healed. Some of those who are healed are also wanting to hear Jesus. Some of those who are coming to be healed have no interest in hearing him. They just want to get healed. But they come healed of their diseases. And what are we told?
He healed them all.
Healed them all. He cast out those who are troubled with unclean spirit. He cured those with unclean spirits, and he healed them all. Jesus cures. He heals them all. And how does he heal them?
Power came out from him,
Yeah.
touched him.
Those who touched him, power came out from him. Interesting.
How could they not believe he was the Christ? It just blows my mind.
Yeah, well, it's it's a question. It really you start to see that there are perhaps other forces at play.
Mm.
Do you I think was it R.C. Sproul had a book called Willing to Believe?
Mhm. Yeah,
And that question about like, do you one of the biggest obstacle to faith is that we don't want it to be true. We don't- Even if, so when you don't want something to be true, no amount of evidence is going to convince you that it is. It is in your benefit, it is in your for whatever reason you've determined, and there are many who don't. Why would people not want Jesus to be the Messiah?
Well, there's always that feeling that, I'm doing this. I'm good. I am rolling my life. Everything is the way I'm making it happen. Like I am under control. And if you believe that God is real, then, and that Jesus is God, then all of a sudden that all goes away.
Yeah.
No longer God yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, to believe that Jesus is Messiah means that I need to admit that I am wrong, that I have to humble myself. I have to learn a whole new way. And that's easy for some people if you've got nothing going. But if you've established yourself like the Pharisees have, that's really hard. And the sports has really been, being a sports fan, I think has helped me understand a lot of the mentality and the biases in sort of a harmless setting. It's sort of like, when I'm rooting for a team, it's like I want why is it that people argue over like who's the greatest? Who's the greatest quarterback, right? And there are people that are insistent that, Tom Brady is not the greatest quarterback. It's, Joe Montana or somebody else, and they'll come up with all their stupid statistics. I'm like, stop it. What does he have to do to prove it to you? He's won seven, been to 10 Super Bowls, he won seven of them. The guy's insane. And yet they refuse to believe it. And the reason is, well, it's easy for us to believe in New England because we love the guy, we love the team. But if you hate the Patriots, you're going to find any reason you can to go kicking and screaming, and you will not concede. You will not concede because you have a dog in the race here, and there's a certain bias that we have, and so you're going to see that these who is it? Who have we met already that will do everything in their power to make sure that not only that they will not believe, that as many other people will not believe also. Who have we seen already?
Pharisees.
Pharisees and scribes. He's humiliating them. He's exposing them. You know what? I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. They're locked in. There is no convincing. The only way that Jesus could get them to say, yes, you're the Messiah, is if he were to overpower them, threaten their very lives, and show his full glory and just basically consume them, be ready to consume them right there. Then maybe out of fear, they might concede. Okay, 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 uncle, you're the Messiah. But of course, that's not how Jesus operates, is it? That's not the kind of faith he's looking for. Um, so we have that scene here. They're coming to him, and now he begins what is similar to the Sermon on the Mount. It's called the Sermon on the Plain, and it is different. And I don't know if it's the same sermon that Jesus gave in Matthew, but Luke is picking out different passages to emphasize, or if it's a whole different setting because he does it on a plain, whereas Matthew talks about going on a mountain. However, um, it's
You have
kind
to,
of
you have to believe that he's done this more than once.
Yep.
yeah, and it could be that that first part where he takes the disciples up with him, that's where he gives them the Sermon on the Mount, and then maybe he comes down and gives the Sermon on the Plain. Who knows? I think it's a different setting because he seems to be he's speaking to all the crowds, even those who don't believe in him. Whereas Matthew's gospel, the focus is on the disciples. So, but we'll see. It's going to be hard to put them together, but we'll take them each separately and see where they lead us here. So let's start with the um Luke's take
I have
on.
a note in my Bible that says the Beatitudes, and then in parentheses, Matthew 5:3-12. And we know that the Beatitudes in Matthew go from 5, 6, and 7, chapters 5, 6, and 7. So it's interesting that it just puts a clump from chapter 5 in.
Yeah, that's the Matthew 5 is the Beatitudes, just the blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those.
I'm
Uh,
saying here that Luke is only using Beatitudes from 3 to 12,
Yeah, he doesn't
do the whole
he
thing.
only takes a few of them. He takes 4 of them. So let's just talk about that for a second here. Let's go through the so these are the sort of the Beatitudes, if you will, according to Luke. All right. So, all right, what are they here? We've got let's read those together here. Bob Thomas, you want to get that for us? 20 to 23.
And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven.
Yeah.
For so their fathers did to the prophets.
So interesting. So he gives 4. He picks 4 of them. Remember in the in Matthew's gospel, if you remember, it was blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are those who hunger and thirst, blessed are the meek, blessed are the pure in heart, blessed are the peacemakers. Did I miss some here? Blessed are the those persecuted. I think there are 8 beatitudes in Matthew's gospel. Here there's just 4. 4 blessings. All right, let's talk about those 4. What's the first one? Blessed are those. First off, he doesn't say those. You'll notice.
Mm.
Who does he say?
Blessed are you.
Who's the you?
All of us. His people.
Yeah, he notice he said he's looking at his disciples and he says to them, you decide. He's not just talking about the poor in general.
Right.
Blessed are you poor disciples.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and what is their blessing?
Kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of God.
Yours is the kingdom of God. Okay. And then the next one is
Blessed are ye that
Hungry,
yeah, you hungry.
you'll be satisfied.
Yeah. Again, disciples. He's talking to I think it's such an important word that you, not just those in general. Whereas Matthew says, blessed are the poor in spirit.
Right.
Mm.
That's the more general term referring to all those who are poor in spirit. Here he's speaking to his disciples who are those that are there, and they're poor. And that's the reality, is they are poor. And they're hungry, many of them, who are hungry now. And you shall be satisfied. All right. So if you come back to the those that are hungry, he doesn't say what they're specifically hungry for. It says they're hungry. But if you look back at the passage before, as he described those who were coming to him, what were they hungry for? We look back in verse, why they came to him.
They're looking to be healed.
They're looking to be healed, but they're also looking for something else.
For
Cured,
the message,
I'm
for what
cured
he has
from
to
things.
say.
Say that again, Elizabeth?
For the message, for what he has to tell them about.
Yeah, they came to hear him. They came to hear him, to be taught of him. And he does say, in Matthew, he brings that much closer when he says, man does not live by bread. Well, he actually brought it out in Luke already. Man does not live by bread alone, by every word. So there's that. But you shall be satisfied. And then blessed are you who are who weep. And again, the weep now. You're hungry now. You're poor now. And those of you who weep now, what's that you say? You shall
Laugh.
laugh. Okay.
In my NASB, that one that says, blessed are you who are hungry now, mine just drops off the R and it says, blessed are you who hunger now, which to me is a little different. It can be a little different because we're thinking in this version that we are physically hungry for nourishment. But when it just says you hunger,
Yeah.
I could see that as meaning we can all hunger for something.
Yeah.
In a different way of just food nourishment.
Yeah. The point is that as this, well, let's do the last one and we'll kind of put them together here. And then finally, blessed are you, who what?
Who, when people hate you.
Yeah. You who are hated, excluded, reviled,
Mm.
spurned as evil.
Oh, it's the Son of Man.
Yeah, on account of Son of Man. Your reward is great. For joy. Leap for joy. Your reward is great.
Mm.
So you need to be thinking, he says, and you are, basically his conclusion is, Jesus' disciples are like the prophets, chosen by God, despised by the world.
Mm.
So right now, that's what he gives us. He welcomes them, his disciples, and lets them know. It's like, there's nothing wrong here. You're poor, you're hungry, you weep now, you'll be hated and reviled because you belong to me. There is no advantage in this life for following Christ. None whatsoever. This is, but that's not a bad thing. That's not something to be fixed. Rejoice in that day. Your reward is great in heaven, if you remember.
Mhm.
Let's get that. So he speaks about the now and the later. Now it's like, now we suffer with him. Now we weep, now we hunger, now we're poor, now we're hated. But rejoice. The kingdom is ours. We will be satisfied. We will laugh, and our reward is great in heaven. Starts with that eternal perspective for us. It's interesting that Luke chooses 4 blessings. The significance of the number 4.
Speaking of the whole world, in a sense.
Yeah, 4 is the number of the world here.
4 corners of the earth.
Luke is not speaking to the just the Jews. His message is for
Mm.
Gentiles, it's for all the nations, and he's
Mm.
going to emphasize that. Matthew's gospel is much more Jewish, but Luke is going to calls them out, um, and this is the situation for all the nations. So here we are. All right, so he calls them forward, and then he goes to our next section, which Matthew doesn't go to, but Luke does. Verses 24 to 26, he gives 4 woes. So let's pick those up. Bob, you want to read those for us?
Woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you, for so their fathers did the false prophets.
Yeah. So we have up here these 4 blessings to his disciples. And then we have 4 woes, you could say, to the world. And what are they? First,
Those who are rich
Rich.
have already received the consolation.
what does that mean? You've received your consolation.
Your reward.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's no future consolation for you. There's no future reward. Reward is now. He said that to the Pharisees, remember, in Matthew's, he talks about don't pray like the hypocrites, because they have their reward. They've already have their reward. They get the praise of men. That's all they're going to get. Don't be like that. You who are rich, you have your consolation right now. No future reward there. You who are, what's the next one?
Full.
You who are full now. You will be hungry. Just turning the tables on them. And then you who laugh now, you will mourn.
Mourn and weep.
And then the last one is,
When people speak well of you,
yeah,
That's a scary one.
well, yeah,
like the fathers did to the false prophets.
that's how the fathers treated
Mm.
false prophets. So when you read this, what should we conclude here? That, we here as Americans, we could certainly be classified as those who are rich, those who are full, those who enjoy life, who have pleasures in this life and can laugh at things, and those who maybe even have, people speak well of us here. We're in good shape.
Yep.
How do we get out of these woes here? How do we look at this and say, is that what is Jesus condemning us because we live as middle class Americans who, are doing pretty well for ourselves? Is that what this condemnation is about?
There's always 2 groups in the scriptures. There's always 2, good and evil, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that first group is people who have been shown their spiritual poverty and mourn over it. And the second group is those who have not been shown their spiritual poverty, and they think they're in pretty good shape.
Okay.
What it comes down to.
Yeah.
As the first group being those who lean into the Lord and trust in the Lord, and the second group is those who believe in their own flesh and lean into their own knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I look at this section here, Jesus' teachings can be challenging for us because, again, he doesn't teach like Paul does, where he gets into the specifics and the litigation of it. He speaks in proverbs, things that are easy to remember, that are driving home a point. That's a very powerful point, but it's not exhaustive. It doesn't speak to it. We know he doesn't mean that all the rich people are going to be damned. We know that's not the case, because he welcomes rich people like Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus doesn't give everything away.
Yeah.
He gives half away. And there are rich people that followed him. And Paul has specific commands to rich people. Command the rich to don't trust in your wealth, but be rich in good deeds. Use your wealth to bless others. He's not telling them to get rid of it all.
Abraham was rich.
Abraham and David, goodness, David was rich, or Solomon and these guys. Yeah. So there's no sin in being wealthy here. That's not what this is about. But you'll notice in the text here is there's something very clear in the text that's being driven home with each statement. It's the now and the later, if you noticed. Each of these blessings and curses speaks to the now and the later. So you poor now, hungry now, disciple, weep now, or hated now. Later, yours is the kingdom of heaven. You shall be satisfied. You shall laugh. Your reward is great. Same thing, other side. You're rich now. You've received your consolation. No reward. You're full now. You will be hungry later. So it's the now versus the later. And that's really, I think, at the heart of the matter is to understand that Christ's kingdom, his disciples, that our focus is not on the now, but on the later. That we are looking for our inheritance. And so we hold the things of this world. If God chooses to bless us with wealth and he gives a nice home, be thankful. There's no shame in that. But we hold it lightly because we know this is not our reward. And even Abraham understood that. For all his wealth, he lived in tents. He knew this was not his reward right now. His reward's coming later. Moses, same thing. All the saints. It's like, so our focus is on the everlasting things, not on the momentary things. And so there are seasons when we're going to laugh and we're going to cry, but we know that when things are going really well in this life, that's not our hope. We can enjoy it for the moment, but we know it's passing. Our hope is coming. And the people who he's talking to in the woes in the world are those who their focus is on the now. They are the ones who are following Joel Osteen's advice. You can have your best life now. That's what we're about. Their best life right now. And they're not thinking about the eternal of what is to come. So that's that's how I would take it, because again, when Jesus speaks, he speaks in such poetic language. It's designed to be remembered. This is not a universal condemnation of people who are rich. It is not a universal acceptance of those who are poor. There are plenty poor heathens out there, and there are plenty of believers. The question is, where's your heart? Where's your treasure? What are you valuing? What are you pursuing? So that's how I would take it there. All right, I need a break here, so let me just close this.